Hey everyone, welcome back to my jewelry course. So this is lesson number 8, and in lesson number 8 I'm going to show you how to make a material library to use with Blender's feature of an asset library so that you always have a gold material to apply to your models for your jewelry designs. And if you find these lessons helpful, please like and subscribe, and you can hit that notification bell and get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, some of these videos are going to be part of a paid course where you'll have to join as a member of my YouTube channel or go to a Patreon page where I'll have these videos for all its members. Thanks for watching. Let's get started. We will be covering the creation of an asset library that we can use with Blender and put our precious metal materials into our Blender files. Now, Blender came out with asset libraries a couple versions ago, and these asset libraries allow us to store things like models, materials, poses, anything that Blender does, well, almost anything that Blender can do, you can store as an asset file or an asset object into a library file. We need to understand what a library file is because we'll be referencing that in a little bit. And to understand that a little bit better, I hope you understand how you create and store files on your computer. For instance, I have on my hard drive here, I have a folder called Blender Libraries. So you'll want to create that. Now you're going to open up that folder once you create Blender Libraries. You're going to create another folder. And for this particular purpose, for lesson 8, we'll be creating a folder called Precious Metals. Now, precious metals is going to be the metal material that we use in our jewelry designs, for instance, white metals and yellow metals, representing white gold, sterling silver, or platinum, and then the yellow material being yellow gold. These are the only materials that we really have to consider while we're working with jewelry design, because all the other materials that we'll be using are built into anything that we're working on. So, for instance, if you understand the theory of creating a folder, like a filing cabinet, we've got a Blender's library file. And that library file or that library folder is going to be like the drawer in a filing cabinet that you can store all your other libraries into. Now, the purpose of creating new folders in that or subfolders within that library is because when you use asset files within Blender and it goes to reference the file that we'll create for precious metals, it uses the title of that particular folder as a reference in Blender to what's in it. You'll understand, you'll see this in a little bit. I just want to cover that a little bit so that you understand that you really should create a library folder that you're going to use for your personal libraries, and then you're going to create subfolders for those particular files that you're going to create as asset files. An asset file is nothing more than a standard Blender file that you save onto your hard drive, with the exception that within that file, you store or mark certain objects in your 3D viewport or your materials tab as library assets. I'm going to walk you through that now. I'm just going to get this off my screen, and we're going to start with a new object. We don't need this particular cube because in the jewelry industry, we like things nice and shiny and round and sexy. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this cube, and I'll delete that. I'm going to hit Shift-A. I'm going to add in a new mesh object, and it's going to be a UV sphere. With that done, I'm going to right-click on that particular object, and we're going to come over to Shade Auto Smooth. Now, what that means is this object is kind of now shaded smooth, and you can't see every individual face on it. So that's the object that we're going to apply our material to, or we're going to create a new material to. And since we're working with two materials, a white metal and a yellow metal, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this particular object by pressing Shift-D and then press Enter. With that new object selected, and you can see over here in the outliner we have sphere and we have the copy sphere. I'm going to take that copy, I'm going to drag it over here. Now, if you've set up your Blender file as I have through the setup and settings portion as we've gotten into this course, your screen should look similar to this. You might have different colors here. Okay, but that being said, let's come over to our first sphere. And what we want to do is create a yellow gold material for this. The yellow gold material will be a hex reference to what that material looks like. To get a good view in your 3D viewport, I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to go over to where these 4 globes are here, and these circles represent our viewport shading. We have wireframe, we have model shading, or this would be the solid view shading. We have material preview, and we have rendered preview. Okay, so our rendered view is where we're going to go. Now, you should be set up just like I am to get this kind of a screen. Your screen should look very similar to this if you followed along with lessons 1 through 7 so far. Now what we want to do is go ahead and create a material for this particular sphere. So I'm going to select the sphere by left-clicking on it. And then I'm going to come over to our Properties tab here, and I'm going to select on Material Properties. It's going to be based on this particular object. The first thing we want to do is come over to our Materials View port here, or our Materials panel here. We're going to select New. It's going to bring up a whole lot of settings here that we can go through and change, but we're only going to change 3 or 4 of them, so don't worry so far. The next thing we want to do is where it says Material, you're going to double-click there and type in Yellow Gold. That being said, what we want to do next is change the material color to represent a color that's yellow. To do so, I'm going to come over to the hex section of my screen, and I'm going to click on, or I'm going to type in the following number. This is a number that I use that works for me. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to type in this particular value right here, E7B84B. So write that down or type it in right there. That should give you the color of a kind of goldish color. That looks a little bit off because it's not quite shaded properly yet. We're going to go and fix that right now. And this is not complicated. It's very easy to do. We're going to come over here now to the metallic properties, and we're going to click on that, left click on that once, and type in 0.95. Press enter, and now you can see we've increased the metallic properties of that material slightly so it looks a little shinier. However, looking at the viewport, it's pretty rough right now because we haven't adjusted one more setting that we have to change, and that is the roughness setting. So what you're going to do is click here in the roughness settings value and type in 0.1 and press enter. Now your viewport should look similar to this, and this should be like a yellow reflective golden material, and that's what we're looking for. That's the material we're looking for. Now, again, remember I said we're going to create an asset library. So we haven't saved this particular file yet, and it's always good to save your file as you move along. So remember that file structure that I showed you. We have the Blender's library file, and we double-click that, and we've created a folder called Precious Metals. And we want to store or save this particular Blender file into that folder. So bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if you know where yours is, we're going to go over to File, Save As, and you're going to navigate to wherever that folder is. So here you can see I've gone to the main folder where my Blender Libraries folder is. I'm going to double click that to open up that folder. And here you can see I've got other materials, wood materials, and precious metals. So I want to save this as a file, a Blender file in my precious metals folder. So I'm going to double click that. We're going to come over where it says untitled.blend, and we're going to type in gold materials. You can type it in any way you want. Gold materials. And then we're going to come over to Save As and save that file. Okay, so I've done that, and we now have a gold materials folder file that you can see, and that's what we're working for, and it is a Blender 4.2 file. With that done, we're going to come over to our material again where it says yellow gold in the object properties here, and I'm going to right click on that and then hit mark as asset. That will mark the color or the material as an asset within this particular file. We're done with the yellow gold portion, so let's come over to our second sphere, and we're going to click on that. And you can see no material has been applied to this. We can hit this little drop-down box and apply an existing material to it. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is click the new button one more time, and we're going to change this to white gold. Now, we're going to follow the same procedures that we did with the yellow gold. We're going to come over to our properties here for our base color. We're going to click on that under hex value. This is a value that I use, and it is B5AC9E. So if you see that, write it down and put that in the hex value, press enter. And now you can see our material changed shading colors a little bit. We're not done yet. Again, we have to change the metallic properties. We're going to come over to the metallics property box, and we're going to type in 0.95 and press enter. Under roughness, you can see our model is still rough. We want to change that to 0.13 and then press enter. And now you can see our white gold material looks more like a white metal. You can tweak these little values as much as you'd like to see if you can get that a little bit better on your viewport, but that's pretty much what it looks like here. And again, one more time, we are going to the white gold material listed in the properties box here, and we're going to right click on it and then mark that as an asset. Okay, so these two materials now are marked as assets within this particular Blender file, and this is the gold materials file that we just saved. We're going to save this file one more time, File, Save, and we're going to overwrite the existing file that we initially made. Okay, so we're done creating our assets, but how do we get them in our standard Blender? For instance, if I want to come over and create a new file, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new sphere so that we can look at it. Shift A, Mesh, and UV Sphere. I'm going to right click on that and do Auto Smoothing just so we're back here. Now, if I come over to the Materials tab, and I hit this little drop down box, you can see there's no materials stored in our Blender file. That means they don't exist anymore, but they still exist in that initial library file that we saved just a moment ago. Now, how do we reference that file within Blender? Again, this is where Blender asset libraries come into place. Let's come over to our Edits menu, and we're going to come down to Preferences. And under Preferences, I'm going to move this to the middle so you can see it. We're going to go to the last option tab on the left side, which is File Paths. Now, this means that when we want to add a library file to our asset libraries for use in other Blender files, what we have to do is reference a path to that particular folder. What we're going to do now is we're going to browse over to that folder. So I'm going to click plus to add in a new link. So we've referenced back to that initial folder where our Blender libraries folder presides, where our Blender library file presides. We're going to double click that to open it up. And now we're going to double click the Precious Metals folder, and we will hit Add Asset Library. What it's going to do is take that Blender file that we stored in that folder and use it as a library. So I'm going to hit Add Asset Library. Okay, we've added to it. Here it is. This is the link going to that folder. Yours might be different because you're going to store it someplace different. Just remember, store it someplace where you won't delete it because you're always going to reference it. If you have autosave feature turned on for autosave preferences, go ahead and close this window. If you don't, press the save preferences and then close the window. Now that's done, and we can go over to File, New, and General. And now we want to, I'm going to close this up here. We want to go back and add in gold material here. Well, we're not quite there yet because if I come down to the Materials tab, we still don't have any materials here in our folder. What we have to do is go ahead and view our folder that holds our library into a tab called our Asset Library window. To do that, what you're going to do is you're going to use your mouse in the 3D viewport, move your mouse to the lower left corner of the viewport, and you should see it change to a little plus sign. Once it turns to a plus sign, left click, hold, and drag up. What you're doing here is creating a whole nother window. And for the practical purposes of this, I'm not going to go into detail about what this window is. It's a copy of the original viewport window. We can change this to anything we want it to be within the purviews of the options we have. For instance, if I click on this little drop-down box here, these are the functions that we can change that window to be so that it appears at the bottom of our viewport. I'm going to come over here and select Asset Library. With that done now, you can see the standard asset libraries that Blender has. Because we added the Precious Metals folder to our selection in the Preferences window, you can see gold is referenced here, yellow and white. We don't necessarily want to see all this other stuff because it just clutters up and gets in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this area where it says All. I'm going to hit the drop-down box, and I'm going to hit Precious Metals right here. With that being done now, you can see that our white material and our gold or yellow material are here in our Asset Library section. And just to give myself some more room, I'm going to come over to this little Settings tab here. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to change this to 48 and press Enter. And you can see it makes these library files, these library objects, slightly smaller. I'm just going to drag that down here. And now every time I open Blender, this is the view that I want to have. I want to have my materials file here in my asset folder. I want to have my little default cube up here, and I have everything else set the way I want it. With that being done, I want you to come over to the File menu, come down to Defaults, Save Startup File, and then hit Overwrite. Every time you open up a new Blender session, you will be presented with this setup. So far, so good. If you followed along right now, you can see we've got our yellow and white gold materials here. And what we're going to do is get rid of this cube. I'm going to come over and add another mesh UV sphere. We're going to shade it smooth. Now, this is model view. It's never going to show you the materials that you apply. So what we're going to do is come over to the rendered view. So click on that little globe there, and now we're in rendered view. Your model should be white, and there should be no material applied to it, judging by the fact that we have nothing applied here. We still do not have any materials in our material list. That's okay, because what we want to do now is come down to our yellow gold materials that we saved before. You're going to left click, hold, drag, and put it onto the object that you want to apply it to. And here you can see our sphere has turned to yellow gold. You can do the same with white gold, just put it over there, and now those materials are available for your objects. So that's creating an asset library for precious metals, and we're going to have to do that for the rest of this course because as we follow along with the lessons here, we are going to be using that to show rendered versions of our objects to our clients. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope Lesson 8 helped. If it did, give me a thumbs up. You can help support this channel by hitting the thanks button and donating a cup of coffee. And if you liked it, you can subscribe and go to notifications. And every time I upload a new lesson, you'll be notified as I do this. Remember, most of these lessons are going to be paid for from this point on, so you'll have to become a member. To join the membership, hit the little join button down below, or go to the Patreon page that I have, and you can become a Patreon supporter. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.